Good evening. President Bongbong Marcos is asking for emergency legislation from Congress that will allow him to reduce the excise tax on petroleum products such as oil and gas. This comes as the fuel prices are expected to soar amid the escalating conflict in the Middle East. In a surprise briefing on Tuesday, March 3, Marcos says he is in talks with the Senate and House leaders to grant him authority to reduce the excise tax on petroleum products should Dubai crude exceed $80 per barrel. No details are provided on how much the reduction on excise taxes will be.
Wala pa tayo doon. But if in case that happens, then maybe this is something that we will have to, this is one tool that we will have to have. So I will discuss it with the leadership of Congress and to see it is going to be an emergency measure. It is not going to be a permanent measure. It will be something that we will dispose of as soon as the crisis is over.
This is among the Marcos administration's moves to cushion the potential effect of the ongoing Middle East crisis in the Philippines' energy sector and economy. The Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion Law or TRAIN law mandates the automatic suspension of excise taxes on petroleum products if the average global oil prices reaches $80 per barrel for 3 consecutive months. The Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board says it is considering provisional fare increases amid escalating tensions in the Middle East. This comes as local oil firms increase the prices of their petroleum products, with diesel marking its 10th straight week of rising prices. Fuel prices are also expected to surge next week amid the conflict. In an interview with reporters on Tuesday, March 3, LTFRB Chairperson Vigor Mendoza II says agency will still determine the magnitude of a provisional fare hike and when it would be implemented. According to Mendoza, requests for permanent fare increases remain pending with the agency. These include the request of a 2 peso increase for jeepneys and city buses, 50 centavos per kilometer for provincial buses, and an increase of 30 to 40% for point-to-point services. Mendoza notes that permanent fare increases should be considered carefully as they are harder to take back afterwards.
Coming up with a permanent decision is something we have to consider kasi pag permanent decision na yan, ang hirap bawiin afterwards. So we will have to conduct another public hearing just to bring it down. So we're studying the options available to us, including the granting of provisional fare increases in the meantime that the volatility of the price of fuel is so great.
The LTFRB chief also notes that fuel subsidies are more of a priority for the agency. He says the remedy is more long-term and that the relief will aid franchised vehicles for up to a month and a half. In a separate interview, Manibela Chairperson Mar Valbuena says another solution is to remove excise tax on petroleum products. He says this will save approximately 6 pesos per liter. He adds that his group supports the measures to respond to rising fuel prices.
Naiintindihan naman tayo ng ating mga kababayan, nakakausap naman natin yung ating mga mananakay na nauunawaan nila yung ating mga hinaing. At ito ay pansamantala lamang naman. At sana yung mga fuel subsidy maibigay na rin.
The Department of Migrant Workers says an overseas Filipino worker who was injured after a strike in Kuwait is now safe. In a message on Tuesday, March 3, Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak confirms that a Filipino working at the airport terminal in Kuwait sustained neck injuries. He notes that the OFW is doing okay and was already discharged from the hospital on March 1. The victim is the second Filipino casualty in the ongoing conflict. A Filipina caregiver from Pangasinan passed away in a retaliatory strike against Israel on Monday, March 2. The U.S. and Israel attacked Iran on Sunday, February 28. Iran then launched retaliatory strikes against American bases, including in Kuwait. According to the U.S. Central Command, the Kuwaiti air defenses also shot down 3 American jets by mistake, and debris from the air asset reportedly hit a fuel container. The DMW says it is ready for a mass repatriation after the conflict in the Middle East, where there are over 2 million Filipinos. Meanwhile, President Bongbong Marcos earlier Tuesday said There were over 1,400 Filipinos in the Middle East who requested repatriation to the Philippines. However, the president cited challenges in repatriating Filipinos at the moment following the escalations in the region. The Philippine Navy says it monitored more than 60 Chinese vessels across key features in the West Philippine Sea in February. In a statement, the Navy says it tracked 62 Chinese vessels near strategic features in the disputed waters from February 1 to 28. These vessels include those from the People's Liberation Army Navy and the China Coast Guard. Based on the Philippine Navy's data, the largest presence was recorded at Panatag Shoal, which is about 220 kilometers from Luzon in the West Philippine Sea. Panatag Shoal saw 23 Chinese ships, including 11 People's Liberation Army Navy vessels and 12 China Coast Guard vessels. Authorities monitored 17 vessels in Ayungin Shoal, including 15 from the China Coast Guard and 2 from the People's Liberation Army Navy. Ayungin is a low tide elevation located 194 kilometers off Palawan. Escoda Shoal had 13 ships composed of 7 China Coast Guard vessels and 6 People's Liberation Army Navy vessels. Escoda lies 195 kilometers west of Palawan. Meanwhile, 9 Chinese vessels were also observed near Pag-asa Island, including 5 from the People's Liberation Army Navy and 4 from the China Coast Guard. Pag-asa Island is about 528 kilometers west of Palawan. The Philippine Navy says the monitoring was part of broader maritime domain awareness operations covering the country's waters. According to the Navy, heightened activity was observed not only in the West Philippine Sea but also in northern Luzon, Western Mindanao, and along the country's eastern seaboard. China continues to reject a 2016 arbitral award that invalidated Beijing's expansive claims in the West Philippine Sea. And these are the stories you need to know today. I'm Neil Mercado. Follow INQUIRER.net on Facebook, X, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit. For more stories, visit INQUIRER.net. Good evening.